Greetings, welcome to Sunday Morning Announcements with the Eric Wallace avatar. If you're with us on Facebook or YouTube, please subscribe to get notifications when we have new videos. If you're with us on Zoom, say hi in the chat so we can say hello back. If you're with us in person, hi everybody! And if this is your first visit, please sign the guest book either in the lobby or online at oakcliffuu.org/guest. Also, if you're here in person, note our new weekly feature, Meet Your Board. Today we have our Vice President and Secretary, Sarah Rickey. Do you have questions, concerns, or opinions to share with the board? Every Sunday morning, starting at 9:30 and ending when the service begins, a member of our board, either in person or on a tablet via Zoom, will be available to meet with you and discuss your thoughts. We hope you'll take advantage of this opportunity. Today, Renée Brill is in the pulpit with Sometimes Healing is Messy, Right to Comfort, Fear of Open Conflict, and Power Hoarding. Please note this is the last sermon in the series based on Tema Okun's paper, White Supremacy Culture, Still Here. If you missed any or would like to review them, please visit our video channels on Facebook and YouTube and on our church website. We hope you can stick around after the service for Talkback, where we gather in a circle and discuss the sermon and related topics. If you're unable to join us in the sanctuary, we share the Zoom meeting information at the end of our services in the online chat. Today, Adult Religious Exploration with Sarah Rickey continues with the discussion of owning your religious past, claiming the positives. Join us on Zoom or in person in the Hope Library at 11:15. Also today, at 1 o'clock, our board meets in the Hope Common Room and on Zoom. This meeting is open to all. And the Second Sunday Jazz Jam returns today to the second Sunday in the sanctuary from 3 to 5 p.m. Come play, sing, or just listen. You are welcome to bring food and drink for yourself or to share. Admission is free, but there will be a tip jar for the musicians. Coming up this week, our Widening the Circle of Concern work group continues to meet on Monday at 7 p.m. Please join us by attending the weekly meeting and or submitting your comments and suggestions via email at wcoc@oakcliffuu.org. The WCOC group sends a big thank you to all the voting members who turned out and stepped up for the special meeting last Sunday. Quorum was met, and the motion to begin delivery of the DEI workshop passed easily. Work has now begun on sorting out potential dates for the beginning of next year. Stay tuned for details. Then, on Tuesday the 12th, the Coordinating Council meets on Zoom at 7 p.m. Ministry and committee chairs, we hope to see you there. And looking forward, mark your calendars for Friday evening, December 22nd, and join us as we celebrate the winter solstice on our campus. Weather permitting, the celebration will be held at the Labyrinth from 6:30 to 8 p.m. and is open to everyone. We hope to see you all there. And please note that on Christmas Eve Day, our 10 a.m. service will feature multiple voices from our congregation and a Christmas cookie communion. If you have a favorite Christmas story you would like to share, please contact worship@oakcliffuu.org. More information on all these events can be found on the back of your order of service and in the weekly e-blast. Not receiving the e-blast? Well, you should be. Just sign up at oakcliffuu.org/enews. It's that easy. Finally, we have 2 member birthdays to celebrate this week. Happy birthday to Leah Pittman and to Kathy Gray. That's it for now. Have a great Sunday and rest of the week. Bobby, is this your cat?
Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Oak Cliff. Let us begin our sacred work by lighting our chalice, our beacon of hope, with these words from Amy Russell. You who feel your heart is breaking, come in. You who are confused and wondering, come in. You who are hungry, in pain, and not wanting to be here, come in. You who are hopeful and energized, come in. Come into this community of your heart, where you have been held in love and comfort, where you have shared your joy and your spirit, where you have asked questions because you felt they needed asking, where you have found friendship and companions, where you have sometimes not agreed, and sometimes not felt comforted, and sometimes not felt heard. Bring your broken heart and your grief. Share them. Bring your confusion and your questions. Share them. Bring your anger and your pain. Share them. Bring your hope and your energy. Share them. For here in this place we can be together. We can gather in all the conflicting emotions tumbling around in our heads and in our hearts. We bring them together here and lay them on the altar of community. For community means that fragile, not perfect human beings can come together in the name of peace and seek to find peace again. Peace, hope, healing. May it be so. In our community, we take time each week to share what is in our hearts and on our minds. If your heart is heavy today, know that you don't have to carry that heartache alone. Together, we can offer comfort. Please share your joys publicly by posting them in the Zoom chat, or send them to our Facebook Messenger, or speak them aloud.
When I I'll breathe in peace when I breathe out. I'll breathe out love when I breathe in. I'll breathe in peace when I breathe out. I'll breathe out love.
We also share our joys with one another, knowing that joy calls unto joy, amplified. Together, our voices can rise in a chorus of celebration. Please share your joys publicly by posting them to the Zoom chat, or send them to our Facebook Messenger, or speak them aloud. Welcome to the UU Church of Oak Cliff. Here we seek to build a community where what you believe is less important than how your beliefs guide and inform your participation in the world. Ours is a community that strives to value the inherent worth and dignity of every human being. To our returning visitors, we're so happy you've joined us again. We know your time is precious, and we're honored to have you here today. We'd also like to extend a warm welcome to any who are joining us for the first time. We recognize the bravery it takes to come into a new place, and we're glad you're here. Ours is a covenantal church. Latin for come together. Covenant means a solemn agreement or promise from the heart regarding a course of action between parties. The practice of promising to walk together is the core of our faith. Simply put, it's a guide for the behavior we expect from ourselves and each other. We are bound together by the promises we make to one another, and we recite our covenant during every worship service. Please rise in body or spirit. Because we love one another, we honor each individual's spiritual journey. We celebrate life's abundance in service to each other, our community, and the world. We connect with each other in love, respect, and acceptance. Thus, we do covenant together.
And in Spanish, porque nos amamos uno al otro, honoramos el viaje espiritual de cada individuo. Celebramos la abundancia de la vida en el servicio entre sí, nuestra comunidad y el mundo. Ponemos en contacto a unos con otros en el amor, respeto y acepción, así que hacemos pacto. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Renée, and I would like to invite you into a moment of quiet and of grounding. And we're going to talk about some uncomfortable things. So what I'd actually like to do is kind of, let's do a quick body scan. So we'll start down at our toes. It might help to close your eyes. It might be actually helpful to keep your eyes open if you're feeling pain. Sometimes when you close your eyes, that makes it feel even more overwhelming, right? So I'm just going to start down with my feet and notice if they're comfortable, if they're sore, if my shoes are pinching or falling off. And I'm just going to note it. If there's a way to be more comfortable right now, I'll go ahead and do that. But maybe just if I can't do that, I just want to acknowledge where the hurt is and thank it for giving me information about myself and how I am and where I am in space. So I'm going to start with my feet and my toes and move up to my ankles. And through my calves. And to my knees. My knees are telling me I've done a lot of walking, so maybe I should take some rest. And through my thighs. and my sit bones. And scanning up through my stomach and my diaphragm. Through the tops of my shoulders. And my arms. Down to the tips of my fingers. And up my neck. Relaxing my face. And up through the top of my head. And just note where you're feeling uncomfortable or stress or anxiety, and know that we can come back to. And when you're ready, go ahead and take a deep breath in and return to the space where we are together. So this morning, we are wrapping up our exploration of Tema Okun's White Supremacy Culture. And so I wanted to do some quick recap here while before we finish, and touch a couple of bases just in case you haven't been able to see all of these sermons. We're hoping to get them together into one place so that you can go through them if you'd like, but also we have a link to the article. Maybe you would prefer to read it for yourself and decide for yourself what is useful there. One of the things I also want to mention is that we're looking at these qualities of white supremacy culture from a perspective that all people, regardless of age, race, gender, and any identity that they carry in the United States today, are both harmed by and participate in white supremacy culture, whether they like to or not. It's just the way that our society is set up, similar to how our society is set up to use a lot of carbon in our daily lives, right? We're familiar with the idea of having a carbon footprint and how hard it can be to decrease your carbon footprint. That we have that same perspective about white supremacy culture. Our culture is founded in white supremacy, and it's really difficult to avoid cooperating in that perpetuation of white supremacy culture without some, not just knowledge, but sometimes quite a lot of practice in being able to recognize and then avoid and make different choices. Just like any skill set, it's one that takes time and it takes practice. So we're not going to get where we want to be overnight, but that initial education and that initial noticing is a really beautiful and wonderful place to start. Just having that information so that you can start looking for it and seeing it in the world, in the wild, and how it functions, as opposed to on the page. So this week, we're going to close with the right to comfort, fear of open conflict, and power hoarding. Here's how Tema Okun introduces these qualities. She says, these characteristics focus on our cultural assumption that I or we, the ones in formal or informal power, have the right to comfort, which means that we can't tolerate conflict, particularly open conflict. This assumption supports the tendency to blame the person or group causing discomfort or conflict rather than address those issues being named. So we'll get into a couple of those qualities here in a minute and what that looks like and what our antidotes. But I want to start with this idea about having a right to comfort, because it is something we hope for, right? Nobody likes being uncomfortable. Nobody likes being in pain. We try to avoid it when we can, right? We take painkillers if we have a headache or cramps. We try to avoid hurting ourselves and causing harm to ourselves. We try to be kind and respectful and ask others to be kind and respectful to us. And we might avoid doing things that just are uncomfortable for us, like big crowds or public speaking or travel with a backpack, right? So there's all sorts of things that might make us uncomfortable. But one of the things I really want to bring to our forefront is that comfort is not necessarily always a good thing, right? It's good to stretch our skills by stretching beyond our comfort level, but also some of the things that heal us, right? Even save us can be really uncomfortable, right? So people who are new to sobriety find that extremely uncomfortable, right? Even though we know and they know rationally that if you have a substance use disorder, that substance is interfering with your life and your family and who you want to be, and it's really causing you harm, right? But in those initial days and weeks and months of being sober, you are often, from my understanding, hearing from the newly sober folks, is that you start having feelings that maybe you've suppressed for a while, maybe you haven't noticed, maybe that voice in your head that's not very nice to you is a little bit louder. Maybe you feel more embarrassment about the things that you've done. Maybe there's body pain that you didn't notice before. So that process of becoming sober initially is extremely uncomfortable for many people, including possibly the necessity to go to a rehab center to wean themselves off of, to avoid actual bodily harm, right? There's other kinds of healing that are profoundly uncomfortable. We're familiar with cancer and chemotherapy. Chemotherapy is certainly not a fun process for most people involved. And it's not a fun process to watch your loved ones go through either. And yet, thanks to really difficult chemotherapy, my mom is still alive and with us 20 years after surviving Hodgkin's lymphoma. So I'm really grateful for that, although in the time we were doing it, it was profoundly difficult and challenging. If you've ever broken a bone or hurt a joint or stretch out a muscle or a ligament, you probably have been to physical therapy, and you know that sometimes that can be pretty uncomfortable to put weight on a leg that you're not sure of yet, or to bend it a little bit farther or to stretch it a little bit farther. There's all kinds of ways that healing can be messier than we'd like it to be. Another good example is with mental health care. The road to having good mental health isn't always a straight line. For folks like myself who have a couple of different comorbid conditions, ADHD, depression, PTSD, you kind of are bouncing back and forth between trying to fix one medication and one symptom, and maybe that kind of pushes you off your routine for another symptom that you thought you had under control. It's really not a straight line. And in so many things in science, we're discovering new things every day. So it's a continual and ongoing process, similar to our anti-racist work. It's continual, it's ongoing. We're learning new things every day. Some of those new things could be really uncomfortable. So let's look at the right to comfort from Tema Okun's perspective. The right to comfort, she says, this looks like the belief that those in power have a right to emotional and psychological comfort. Another aspect of valuing logic over emotion, right? So your boss, the leader, the person who's in charge, should not have any negative emotions, right? Or feel bad, right? They have this right to comfort as a part of their position. This can look like, as a result, scapegoating people who cause discomfort. For example, targeting and isolating those who name racism rather than address the actual racism being named. And I can tell you that is certainly something that has happened recently in our congregation as we've tried to do our widening the circle of concern and anti-racist work, is that some of the individuals who have pointed out the harms that they have experienced have been directly targeted by some of our past leadership. Demanding, requiring, and expecting apologies or other forms of "I didn't mean it" when faced with accusations of colluding with racism. So it is useful to not to apologize for the harm that we caused, but we're not trying to like demand and force an apology. What we really want is to help each other understand the underlying cause, right? It's an apology. It doesn't mean much if we don't maintain our relationship with one another, if we don't understand what we need to do to avoid that in the future, and also if we don't understand what we need in order to repair the harm that we caused. So just insisting that people say the right words without necessarily giving space for the right understanding or for education. Feeling entitled to name what is and isn't racism. This is a expectation that a lot of white leaders tend to have, that that definitely wasn't racism because I didn't intend it to be. That's probably the most common way that people can try to avoid or claim that they are the authority on what is and isn't racism. She also says that white people, or those who have dominant identities, so not necessarily white people, equating individual acts of unfairness with systemic racism or other forms of oppression. So that's the difference between saying, "Oh, I got an extra special pat down on the airport the last time I was going through." That's not the same thing as the level of scrutiny and othering that Muslim people can feel, or people who look or are identified as other by whoever that security or TSA person is. So those two things are not the same. That one instance is not the same as the same harm being caused again and again and again. The repetition here is really important. So she says some of our antidotes are to understand that discomfort is at the root of all growth and learning, to welcome discomfort and learn to sit with it before responding or acting. I want to point out that this is something that's actually been really, really helpful for me. I've found that my first instinctual reaction is still not the one I want to have. But if I kind of stop and say, "Thank you, I will continue to think about that and continue to work on it over the next couple of days and over the next week, or maybe a couple of weeks," my inside defense system starts coming down. I stop feeling that defensiveness, and I'm able to see more things from a different perspective and maybe say, "Oh yeah, that's not how I want to be," right? Deepen our own political analysis of racism and oppression so that we have a strong understanding of how our personal experience and feelings fit into that larger picture. Avoid taking everything personally, right? Our collusion with racism isn't necessarily personal, it's systemic. So it's not my failing as an individual to have colluded with racism, but it's my responsibility to try to educate myself and to avoid, so that I can collude less and less and less. Also, to welcome honest and hard feedback as the gift that it is, knowing that people could so easily choose to stay silent and talk about you behind your back rather than gift you with their truth about your attitudes or your behavior, right? It's a risk to tell someone that they've harmed you. And it's a kindness, right? It's a kindness that assumes the other person wants to do better and can do better. Remember that feedback and criticism may be skillful or unskillful, but either way, it's not going to kill you. Remember that critical feedback can help you see your own conditioning as you learn to separate your conditioning from who you actually are. You need to know your conditioning in order to be free, and while your conditioning might be hazardous, you are not. I think that is likely to resonate with a lot of people who've healed from growing up in alcoholic or abusive households, trying to leave that conditioning from a disruptive environment. She also says that this shows up as fear of open conflict, right? We experience conflict as inherently uncomfortable, sometimes even if all we're discussing is what we're having for dinner, right? Here, Tema Okun says people in power are scared of expressed conflict and try to either ignore it or run from it. When someone raises an issue that causes discomfort, the response is to blame the person who raises the issue rather than to look into the issue, or blame the way they raise the issue rather than to look into the issue. An overemphasis or insistence on being polite or professional or not using slang or using the received American pronunciation, rather than setting rules for how ideas or informations and differences of opinion need to be shared in order to be heard. So if you don't meet this rigid expectation, I'll just pretend I didn't hear everything you said. That's not expressly useful, or requiring that people calm down when they're angry. And when they're angry, when anger often contains wisdom about the underlying hurt and where the harm lies. Equating raising difficult issues with somehow being impolite or rude or out of line, like that saying that it's impolite to talk about politics at the dinner table, or polite to talk about race with your friends. That is an unhelpful perspective. Labeling emotion as somehow irrational or anti-intellectual or inferior, which means failing to recognize the importance of emotional intelligence. Pretending or insisting that our point of view is grounded in the rational or the intellectual, but yours is grounded in emotion, and emotion is not as good as intellectual. Some of the antidotes for this are to role play or discuss or plan ways to prepare for conflict when it happens, because we know it will happen. Make ways that we distinguish between being polite and raising hard issues. Don't require those who raise hard issues to raise them in specifically acceptable ways, especially if you're using the ways in which the issues are raised as an excuse not to listen to them or address them. Develop your emotional intelligence so that you can tell when you're hiding your emotions with the excuse that you're being rational. Be transparent about power so that everyone understands who makes the final decision and how the final decision is made. Invite a third or neutral party to support the exploration of the conflict. We have a great neutral party in our Southern region partners. Assume that everyone has a very good reason for their position, and to seek to lift up those who bring the light of day into an issue. And once a conflict is resolved, to take the opportunity to revisit and see how it might have been handled differently. So learn from the ways that we address and engage with conflict. And then the other aspect or shadow of this particular characteristic is power hoarding. So little, if any, value around sharing power. Power is seen as limited, so there's only so much to go around. Those with power feel threatened when anyone suggests how things should be done in an organization or how things might change. Those in power don't see themselves as hoarding power or as feeling threatened. Those with power assume that they alone have the best interests in the organization at heart and assume that all those wanting change are ill-informed, emotional, and unexperienced, blaming the messenger rather than focusing on the message, and clinging and other emotional constriction that clouds our field of vision and catapults us back into our small self, worried with anxiety and threat. Antidotes to the hoarding of power include explicit power sharing as an organizational or community value, regularly discussing and defining what good leadership looks like and how a good leader develops the power and skills of others. If you're a leader and or you hold power, understand that change is inevitable and challenges to your leadership are often healthy and productive. Adopt a tell me more approach to our challenges. If you're a leader or you hold power, avoid taking challenges personally and return to the principle of collective thinking and action. So try not to be the only person making decisions, make decisions together. If you're a leader or you hold power, realize that your ability and responsibility to support others and to hold power well, to support other people to hold power well and responsibly. That you have a responsibility to support others to be successful and to shine, to mentor others and support them. Realize that your ability to support and help others grow reflects well on you as a leader, as opposed to attitudes and behaviors that stem from fear, desire to control, micromanage. I'm the only person who can be a star. If I'm the leader, then I must be the center of attention, right? That's not what I feel, and I don't think that's what we feel a good leader looks like. Allow yourself to feel the joy in helping others grow, thrive, succeed, and even exceed you. Make sure that the organization is focused on vision, mission, and values, rather than staying in business for the sake of being in business. And lean into the racial equity principle of know yourself, developing strategies for making friends with your ego so that you're leading or acting from a place of integrity rather than fear or anxiety about your personal importance. As we move into a place of trying to integrate this work in our doing and trying to absorb this work and learning and teaching around white supremacy culture and what it can look like, one of the things that Tema Okun says here is something that I'm really excited about. Because we're a church that I firmly believe is about to grow. I firmly believe that we have a message of hope, of joy, and of liberation for all people. And we, the folks who are here now, are going to have the incredible and beautiful opportunity of helping each other and new Unitarian Universalists to grow, to thrive, to succeed in their goals, not just of self-liberation, but of community liberation. Because as we know, there is no liberation for me without liberation for we. So I'm really excited for that fun task of helping each other learn, helping each other research, question, imagine, and eventually, hopefully, build that beloved community that we long so deeply for. Thank you so much for your continued participation in this journey, and I look forward to all of the beautiful places it will take us. Amen, Ashe, and blessed be.
Hi, and that was a beautiful sermon. Really quickly, before we get into our next song, we have a few words just to say. This is from Courtney Ariel. She is amazing. She's a singer, songwriter, editorialist, and woman of color. From her excerpt of How Not to Appropriate, a Guide for White People. When we hold things that belong to and were created by and for a group of people with an ethnicity, religion, spirituality, culture, sexual orientation, gender identity, and or lived experience outside of our own, we must hold these things very carefully and lovingly, acknowledging that we are visitors within this space. Being a visitor is a great honor, and it also calls for great responsibility. Our responsibility here is to acknowledge the roots of the works that we borrow from in our services. Our next hymn, it's very popular and old, is an African-American spiritual. And I ask that if you are a visitor in this space, to take off your metaphorical spiritual shoes before treading on this holy ground and acknowledging the history it was born from and the deep importance of these songs that communicate resilience and ancestral wisdom. These songs can hold great spiritual importance for all people, but they don't belong to all people. These songs are powerful, they foster community, they act as living social and political compasses. To quote Kimberly DeBus, a UU song leader on this specific hymn, we're taking up the call to resistance and asking those around us to come with us, to resist oppression and be free. And for people with marginalized identities, it is a matter of life and death. Please stand as you're willing or able in spirit, and let us sing and heed this call to resistance for all people.
Hey, y'all. I appreciate y'all. Appreciate your time this morning. And I hope that my little thing is not going to run too long when I get to it. Before I get to that, I would ask that you would join me in reciting our Widening the Circle of Concern covenant that we added to our services a year and a half or so, 2 years now. I can't keep track. It's printed on your order of worship, and it's going to be on the screen. We, the Unitarian Universalist Church of Oak Cliff, commit ourselves to the study and dismantling of racism and oppression within our congregation. We commit our congregation and ourselves to the work of anti-racism and anti-oppression. We commit ourselves to listening, to learning, and to action. When we fail, we commit ourselves to trying again and again. We covenant to begin this work and to continue until all of us can truly say that we are a beloved community of justice, equity, and compassion. Thank you. So often I read a piece of writing by a UU of color so that we can bring their voices in. Today I've written something that I've wanted to talk to you about. It may not be very gracefully done, but here it is. I do want to talk very briefly about the song that we just sang and a bit of fine print in our gray hymnal, Singing the Living Tradition, which I failed to carry up here with me. Big, thick gray book, hymnal that was published in 93. When I chose hymn number 116, I did so because it really felt fitting to me to follow Renée's final sermon in the Tema Okun series with music that spoke directly to this message that the journey from where we are to where we want to be is vitally essential, and it is difficult, and we intend to persevere anyway. And I could probably do a whole other talk about the email that I got from Kate a couple of days after sharing the song selection with her, in which she expressed a lot of thoughtful consideration about her discomfort with, as she put it, being a very white person leading this particular hymn. And I could talk about how she and I met over coffee to land as we did on Kate providing this contextual introduction before the song. And thank you again, Kate. There she is. Because context is key to a lot of what we are trying to do as a still majority white congregation, bringing in more voices and bringing in more material. But let me get back to the fine print in the hymnal. If you look really closely at hymn number 116, you will find down here somewhere, there he is, a tiny little footnote that says Ethelred. And if you look at the screen behind me, here we go. You will see a picture of Reverend Egbert Ethelred Brown. Now, very briefly, Reverend Ethelred Brown was born in Jamaica in 1875. In 1912, after attending seminary at Meadville, Lombard in Pennsylvania, he became the first African-American ever ordained as a Unitarian minister. Reverend Brown returned to Jamaica and preached there for several years before coming back to the States, where in 1920 he founded the Harlem Community Church and served there until his death in 1956. The story of his lifelong journey and all that he accomplished despite so often getting short shrift in terms of support from the American Unitarian Association merits far more attention than an honorary footnote and far more than I can share in this moment. What I can do is strongly recommend that you seek out and watch, as I did this weekend, a 2014 sermon by Reverend David Carter of First UU in Wichita entitled Egbert Ethelred Brown, an Unsung Hero. It's an engaging half hour in which Reverend Carter does not shy away from some hard truths. Additionally, and finally, If you search the online archives of UU World magazine, you can find a 2017 feature essay by Reverend Dr. Mark Morrison Reed, a retired UU minister and prolific author who is perhaps, I've learned this weekend, the foremost historian of people of color in Unitarianism, in Universalism, and in Unitarian Universalism, the merger of those two faith streams. Reverend Morrison Reed's essay, entitled "The Black Hole in the White UU Psyche," is not an easy lesson. It does, however, ask the crucial question, what is the consequence of not knowing Unitarian Universalism's Black history? Part of that answer I'm going to share in the talkback circle, and I hope everybody will be able to join me there. But I do want to close this out by reading the final paragraph of Reverend Dr. Morrison Reed's essay. The time in Unitarian Universalism, and this was written in, reminder, 2017. The time in Unitarian Universalism when Black lives didn't matter has passed. Nonetheless, change is generational, incremental, and bruising. It comes, but not necessarily on our time schedule. We have fallen short and will again, and when we do, we need to pause and pray and ask, what does love demand of me? And then stand up and try again. Impatience is not what sustains us, but rather dreams, hope, work, and companionship. The chance to pour out one's life for the faith, principles, and people whom we value. Thank you.
Let there be an offering to sustain and strengthen this place that's sacred to so many of us, a community of memory and of hope, for we are now the keepers of the dream. Members, if you're contributing cash toward your pledge, please use an envelope from the basket that Stephen is passing and write your name on it. To text your donation, see the number on your order of service, and for more options, see oakcliffuu.org/donate. Thank you. Our closing benediction today by Reverend Kimberly Quinn Johnson was inspired by the words of June Jordan in her Poem for South African Women, as read at the United Nations on August 9th, 1978. Those words were, "We are the ones we've been waiting for." The benediction. Fitted for this day. We are the ones we have been waiting for. We are not perfect, but we are perfectly fitted for this day. We are not without fault, but we can be honest to face our past as we chart a new future. We are the ones we have been waiting for. May we be bold and courageous to chart that new future. May we have faith in a future that is not known, We are the ones we have been waiting for. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
Extinguimos esta llama, pero no la luz de la verdad, el calor de comunidad o el fuego de nuestro compromiso. Estos los llevaremos en el corazón hasta que estemos juntos otra vez.